when we die the physical death of the body, what does that process in between look like?
Time and space both don't exist on the other side. The first thing people always say is, what about Hitler? What about child abusers? What do you mean that when they died, they got to go to the same place that I got to go or get to go? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You're nuts. What are you talking about? All of us will be murdered in one life. All of us will commit a murder. When we plan our lives, we plan a beginning and an end. But in that time frame, we plan anywhere from 2 to 10 exit points. I went to go apply for my business name. I walked up to the lady to give the paperwork. There's a dead person there. It was her mom, and it would have been her mom's 100th birthday that day. And her mom was insisting that I talk to this woman. And then the entire computer system that she was working on shut down. So I said to the lady, I know this sounds weird, but I need you to know that your mom is here. And then the computer turns back on. There are different dimensions that exist here. Where dinosaurs live, it's not thousands or millions of years in the past. It's now, it's just a different dimension.
Thank you so much, Amber, for being on our show, Under the Tree. I've went through your story, your book. It's amazing. Thank you so much for putting out your wisdom to the world. And this conversation is going to be very deep because you've had a firsthand experience with the whole concept of death that we all are afraid of because of our ignorance. So I really want to dive deep into a question that I've personally had for a long time, and that is when we die the physical death of the body, and then you go to the other side or the afterlife. What does that process in between look like? Is it something that happens instantly, or does it take time to go to the other side? And if we have to reincarnate or get another body, is that something that also happens within a fraction of a time, or does it take multiple years? Can you just provide some context on?
So time and space both don't exist on the other side. So how we perceive or feel things here is very different to how we perceive and feel them there. So the death experience can be different for different people, and especially near-death experiences, we really do, in a way, manifest them to our beliefs, if that makes sense, because we are in control of what we feel, see, hear, all that sort of stuff, just like we are here. But the actual sort of dying process as a human, when you're still in your body, can look different. So because we live so many different lives, we only need to experience certain things a little bit in order to understand them. So, for example, we would not plan a painful death by car accident multiple times over and over again. Once we've done it and learned about it, we probably don't want to do that again. We won't plan a life where we are murdered multiple times. Once it happens once, you probably learned that and felt it and understood it. And so we won't always live and die the same way. So some people, let's say they're dying of cancer, will choose to stay in their physical body until the moment of death. But the majority of people dying of cancer or something painful will choose to leave their body before the moment of death, especially if it's going to be painful, which certain cancers are very painful to die from. We, as soon as we are unconscious, will leave our body and usually stand in the room to listen to your family. And dead people always kind of joke with me like, yeah, I want to hear what they're saying because everybody says the nice things when you're dying. Oh, I'm so sorry that I was a jerk your whole life, or I love you and you're wonderful. And we don't always often say that when we're still alive, right? And so the actual human part of death can look very different for different people. But once we cross over, like fully cross over to the other side, we're all in the same place. And that's hard to understand because as humans, we need a reward-punishment existence. In order to have a functioning human society, there has to be consequences for our actions, or everybody would be nuts and be doing horrible things. As we gain power, we become kind of jerks, right? So we need this as a human, but on the other side, there is no essentially punishment or reward in a way. We all go there. And so when I say that, the first thing, and I don't know if I'm allowed to like say this, you guys might have to, edit it out. But the first thing people always say is, what about Hitler? What about child abusers? What do you mean that when they died, they got to go to the same place that I got to go or get to go? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You're nuts. What are you talking about? But I want to say this, like, if our higher self is a rain cloud and we have infinite raindrops, which are your lives, that life, like Hitler's life, is one raindrop out of infinite raindrops. So do you punish the rain cloud for one tiny, tiny part of their existence, right? Let's it doesn't necessarily make sense when you put it that way. Yes, there has to be reflection. So when we go to the other side, we do like a life review where we learn and we get to look at everything that we did in this life, and not only from our perspective, but from the perspective of everyone you affected or touched, or negative or positively. And we learn from it. But we all also are here to learn and to teach. Even though I don't agree with it and my human self doesn't agree with it, who has taught us more than somebody like Hitler? We are still learning from that human existence. We might not want to when it was a horrible human existence. And, how in the world could that ever be something that we could look at in any way of a positive light, obviously. But we are still learning about connection, love, acceptance, coming together to grow as a human sort of species because of that one existence, right? So that's not really an answer to your question. I kind of went on a tangent, but each human life looks very different, but when we get to the other side, we understand everything, and there's so much connection, and it's like a giant family that understands why we do what we do.
No, I'm glad you brought up that example as well. Just a few days ago, I was listening to some lecture from a monk, and he actually used the example of Hitler as a proof that he was living a life of ignorance of his true self, which is why he did what he did. And that monk said the same thing, where he was like, when Hitler was first born, right? He was a 2-month-old baby. You wouldn't get mad at him in that state because he is pure or naive when he's just entered this plane. But because of the conditioning and the actions that he did, we look at him right now as a negative person. But like you said, that his true nature isn't what was bad. It was that manifestation of that, I guess, mind body combination that
Yeah.
made him do bad actions. I love that you said that.
Well, and we all will, let's say, we will all live a life to experience everything, and you can't do it in one life. It takes infinite lives. So all of us will be murdered in one life. All of us will commit, not always on purpose, but commit a murder because it's a lesson we have to learn. It doesn't have to be like an actual murderer person, it could be murder by an accidental car accident, something like that. We will all, anything that we deem judgeable, like we're judging somebody else for doing it, we will do that in one of our lives. So how can you judge somebody for something that every human, every soul will experience at some point in some life?
And just to get a clarification, the reason we are having these experiences in every life is so eventually we've had all these experiences, good or bad, and we have evolved and realized our true nature through these experiences. Is that true?
Yes, and it's also sort of a collective enlightenment as we are moving up energetically, a higher vibration. we have our rain cloud in all our lives. And eventually, and I don't delve into this too much, especially because I'm like on the cusp. There is a future where I won't live very long, but then there's also another future where I can live a little bit longer. So I don't try to fully know what's going to happen because I don't want to crave going back like I did when I first had the NDE. But eventually, that rain cloud that was created by a bigger rain cloud, we will eventually go back into that. So join up again with that higher source energy to continue to provide enlightenment. This sort of earth, this dimension, and this life is just one small part of so much more sort of connectedness and an enlightenment. And again, like this is one of the hardest schools we go to. And once we are done with this school, there's infinite possibilities for enlightenment and change for our souls.
Yeah. Could you clarify what you meant by you said that you have like two different futures, one where I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that, if you'd clarify.
Yeah. So, we do have so again, we have free will, but we do have a sort of path that we have planned in this life. But down off that path, there's loads of forks for all of our different decisions. And for me, I was shown on the other side. I would come back. I would, talk about my story. I would write books. I would speak to some leaders of the world. I have no idea what that means, but they just sort of tried to show me certain things. And they did show me there is one sort of path where I would live after the stroke, do all of these things, but not live that long, 5 to 10 years after it. But then there was another path where I could live sort of more. I don't see myself getting to old age. I have a very damaged brain. But, a couple more decades. And when we plan our lives, we plan a beginning and an end. Everybody does this, beginning and an end. But in that time frame, we plan anywhere from 2 to 10 exit points, where if we feel like we've learned enough, or maybe we feel like, we don't want to do this, whatever, we can take one of those exit points. So they just showed me to like one of the exit points and my end. That doesn't mean there aren't more exit points. And most of the time we don't realize the exit point. So it's not like, oh, you're going to die a car accident this day or whatever it is. It's usually subtle things. Like maybe one day you wake up and every morning you usually go to this one place for your morning coffee. And that day you're like, you know what? It's the sun's shining. I'm going to drive the way that the sun is with me the whole time. And I'm going to go to a different coffee shop. You would have no idea that if you had gone your regular way, you were going to get in a car accident or something. So it's not like we have a choice or a conscious thing in the back of our head that says, oh, let's not die today. Usually you just sort of pass by your exit points. But because I went to the other side, they were able to show me, a couple of the exit points that were available to me.
And when you mean they, are you referring to a god, or can you describe that a little bit?
So for me, it's my guides. I could feel God on the other side, but God is not necessarily always in like when I was young and I was more Christian or religious, it was like kind of an old white man with like a beard or whatever. And that was God, right? That's not God. God is a sort of shining golden energy of love that is everything. Like God is everything. But I don't necessarily, when I'm talking or communicating with the other side, only once in a while does it feel like God. It's normally my guides. So I have 3 guides and I knew them before the stroke. One is Gail, then Jessica and Peter. But Peter is not necessary. He doesn't look like a human. And his name is not Peter. I gave him that name because his name was something super weird. Like I don't remember, like Ka or Ra or two let. I don't know. It's super strange. And I'm like, I'm not going to call you that. So I call him Peter because it feels less threatening and more like a sort of human thing. So my guides were with me on the other side, helping me to make the decision whether or not I was going to come back. And they also helped me in my work every day and my life. And every human on this planet, not like literally no exceptions, every human has guides, even if we can't see them.
Oh, and in your work, when you are connecting with the other side, or with the spirit world, I'm not sure after how long you were able to realize you had this gift, and also, I mean, how does it feel? How do the people, family or friends, react to this scenario of yours?
So I was born this way. I just didn't understand. I always say I was like an 80-year-old, 3-year-old. The world just felt different to me. And until I was like between 4 and 7, I just thought adults were rude and ignored certain people because I could see all these people that like my parents wouldn't talk to them. And in public, people didn't talk to them. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of weird. It took a long time for me to understand that what I was seeing was not what everybody else was seeing. And I'm also psychic. So I would know things or see things or dream about things, and then they would happen. And I thought I was doing it. Sorry. Like I thought I was causing all of these things to happen. So I would see a plane crash or like a bear attack, and then I would see it on the news. And then when I was young, I think I was in grade 1, maybe, I woke up in the morning and I'm like, Mom, I don't want to go to school today. I'm not going. You can't make me. But my parents worked and my mom was like, you got to go to school. Like, I can't take, you're not sick. And I'm like, I'm not going. Somebody's going to get hurt and there's going to be a ton of blood. And I don't want to go because it's going to be scary. And she's like, you have to go. And my mom later explained, like, she thought if I went and it didn't happen, then I wouldn't be as anxious all the time of all these things happening. And I went and there was a kid on the playground at lunch and he was on like monkey bars and he tried to pull himself up and he hit his face and then he landed and he broke his arm and the bone came out. And then he hit his mouth and there was blood everywhere. And that it scared me so much that somehow I learned to just turn it off. I didn't want to know any of these things. I really did think it was my fault. I wasn't near him. I was in a different part of the playground, but I thought I did it. And so I was able to shut it off until I was like 13 or 14. And then I had kind of a spiritual awakening and a vision of choosing light over all of the awful things I was doing because I learned that if I like smoked pot or drank, then I could turn it off. And then I turned to religion because my 15-year-old brain thought, well, it's light, right? Light, God, that's religion, right? That's what the world tells us. And I was quite religious until I accepted my gifts, which I think I was around 35. And once I turned my gifts off or on, that was it. Like I couldn't turn them off. It was very overwhelming. I don't know how I handled it when I was young. I felt just anxious all of the time, and dead people didn't, I don't want to say didn't respect my boundaries because I didn't have any. But they would want me to like go up to people in public. And I'm like, I'm not doing, that's so embarrassing. Like I live in a small town. And then if I didn't, things would happen. So like I went to go apply for my business name and you have to go to like a government office. And I walked up to the lady to give the paperwork and all that sort of stuff. And it's a government office and she's trying to input the stuff. And there's a dead person there. It was her mom, and it would have been her mom's 100th birthday that day. And her mom was insisting that I talk to this woman. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that's so awful. I'm like sweating, shaking. And then the entire computer system that she was working on shut down. And I'm like, okay, this is super fun. And the lady's like, I'm not going to let it turn back on until you tell her that because I guess the daughter had brought like balloons and a cake to celebrate her birthday, even though she was dead. And she's like, you need to tell her thank you for that. And blah, whatever. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And the lady's like, I don't know why this isn't working. It's never shut down before. Everybody else's computers were working, just not hers. And so she's trying to figure it out. And finally, I was like, fine, I'll say it. So I said to the lady, I know this sounds weird, but I need you to know that your mom is here and she wants to thank you for the balloons and the cake. And she's so grateful for you that you're still celebrating her, even though she's been gone a long time. The lady starts crying and then the computer turns back on. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not fun. This is super embarrassing. I don't want to do this. And it felt almost like it wasn't my choice and I didn't have control. And it took me like about a full year to start to set boundaries. And I never, full stop, never go up to people in public anymore. If they're not asking me, I don't think it's my right to invade people's privacy. And like, what if they have different beliefs? It's not my job to give people faith. They have to come to that on their own. So it's been a very long learning journey.
No, that story is quite fascinating, and because I already have faith in all these subjects, I obviously believe in it. I want to actually bounce off of this story because you said, for example, in the story, the mother who was I think 100 years old, who's been got like passed on from her body for a long time. I was wondering that she's talking to you from the other side. Is there a reason that she has not taken a form into another body somewhere else or back into Earth?
So they have. That's just one raindrop from like our higher self is always on the other side. So you, for example, your higher self is on the other side. And then this you is one raindrop. And then you are living so many other lives, but it's all part of you. So it's not like sort of we die, then we go to the other side, we wait till everybody we love dies, and then we go, okay, I'm going to go back into a life. That's not how it works. We are it's cyclical. So we have lives coming in and out through time. So from the beginning of time until the end of human time, constantly back and forth, back and forth. The only time I really see souls that kind of go to the other side and come back is if somebody has a miscarriage or an abortion and that baby doesn't live a physical life. Often that soul or that raindrop will be the next baby born to that soul family. So I might not be able to, like if somebody comes to me to talk to that that person who died or that baby that didn't live, I can see their higher self, but I can feel and know that one raindrop is already back within their family. Although I don't often tell people that because then they have huge expectations of that child because it becomes, there's more meaning behind that life and it can put unfair sort of expectations on that human life.
Right, that totally makes sense. And when you mean that we're living like multiple lives, so does that mean like, for example, I'm right now my physical self is present here and I'm talking to you, but is it possible that there's another part of me that's living and when you mean, is it also on planet Earth or is it like another realm or dimension?
Both. So for me, time dimensions are different dimensions. So you're living a life in 1400 or 1800 plus now, but also your physical self now, your higher self and all of your lives are living in multiple lives in this time dimension. So there is zero chance that you are the only raindrop from your higher self right now. They've explained it to me and it's hard for me to wrap my head around this part of it. But there are billions of people on the planet right now. What are we at now? Almost 8 billion. There are millions of souls. So if you do that math, that's a lot of lives that we're living. And so, and then also higher dimensions, different dimensions. And there are different dimensions that exist here. So the one that kind of weirds me out is like where dinosaurs live, it's not thousands or millions of years in the past. It's just a different dimension. Same with where like Bigfoot and Sasquatches, and that's why certain people can see them. It's just a different dimension, but on this sort of earthly plane. It's so hard to understand or explain, and I know it sounds like I'm crazy sometimes, but it makes sense to me, but it's hard to explain it in a human way.
Right. No, it doesn't. And do these people or these different people, do we all look the same? Because
No.
people, okay, yeah. Okay.
No, and so on the other side, gender doesn't exist. Your energy is not, it's genderless. And so when I crossed over and I was in that beautiful garden, there, my guides were there, my family members were there. And then to the side were all my other lives, not all of them, but a giant group of them. And there were men, women, children. There were people who didn't look like they had a gender, because that is what we are moving towards, is a little bit more how we are on the other side. Yeah, so no, we do not look. We can kind of have like doppelgangers or somebody that looks somewhat like us, but that's not the norm. The norm is that, like, I'm a sort of 60-ish-year-old woman in South Carolina with huge blonde hair and much heavier, looks nothing like me.
And does that, personally, does that ever give you like any incentive to ever go meet that person? That's technically also.
Once in a while, I do have, like, I feel drawn to certain places, and I can actually explain them even though I've never physically gone there. So, a place in PEI, like, I can see the house. A place in Ireland, like, it calls to me. Like, my soul wants to go there and feel that connection. I don't know if I ever will, but it's almost like a string to another part of me. Certain lives do call to me. I also feel called to certain lives in the past. When I was little, I wanted 11 kids. I don't know why. And I would tell anyone that I wanted 11 kids. And I now know, in the sort of mid 1800s, I was a woman living on the prairies in the States, kind of like Little House on the Prairie, and I had 11 children, but I think only 5 survived childhood, because of disease, sickness, whatever. And that was my life, was those children, housewife, cooking, cleaning, making sure everybody was happy, and having to say goodbye to my children as they kept dying from diseases that now are preventable. And I can, like, I can picture that me, I can picture that life, I can picture those children. But I don't think it would change this life if I were to meet another part of me, because even though it's the same soul, it's a very different raindrop, and, might not be at all like me. And what if I feel ashamed of who they are or the things they've done or anything like that, right? Because their beliefs might not, or maybe they will think I'm absolutely crazy. So I don't know that there would be a purpose to it, but sometimes it feels like an interesting prospect.
And you talked about that story when you were getting your business name registered. Just generally, because you do work with clients and help people, have you ever had any incident as a psychic medium where you felt like, in that kind of that work relationship, uncomfortable telling your client something that you heard from the other side?
Yes. In the beginning, I didn't know what to say and what not to say. And so I made a lot of mistakes as I was learning. I now know you never tell somebody when they're going to die. It's not helpful at all. I don't tell people if they will get pregnant or have a baby, or what that baby's gender will be. And there were certain things that actually made people's lives harder, which is never my intention. But I just figured, if I know it, I should say it, right? Like, why would I know it if I can't say it? And through trial and error, I learned that just because I know it doesn't mean it's almost like, as humans, we have a lot of thoughts, and sometimes they're not nice or they're judgy. You don't say them because you're thinking them. And It was a lot of trial and error. And in the first year, I actually kept a journal of the first year. And I want to say it more than a dozen times. I was like, I'm quitting. Like, this is not helpful. That person contacted me after and were like, oh my gosh, this is. And I would say, sir, and sometimes, at first it would be awful, but then they would thank me later. So, like, I was talking to a dead person and his daughter, she was there, the daughter, and I was talking to her dad on the other side. And he said, oh, I've never been more proud than I am of my 3 children, that they're my pride and joy. And I'm so grateful that I got to live a life with them. And she's like, there's only 2 of us. We don't have 3. And I'm like, well, he says 3. And she's like, no, it's just me. And I don't know if it was a brother or sister, but me and my sibling. I'm like, oh, well, 100% I could be mistaken. It's not always 100% clear. Anyways, like a couple of weeks later, she messaged me and she's like, I went and talked to my mom about this because I was like, everything in the reading made so much sense and was so accurate except for that. And so then I was doubting and that sort of stuff. And apparently the dad had a secret daughter and not told anybody and like refused to, let his wife tell anybody because he was so ashamed that he did this. And now she knows her sister and they're connected. And she was like, thank you so much, because we would have never known, because my mom was going to take it to the grave because like her dad had swore her to secrecy. And now they have this whole expanded family. So sometimes what they say is good, and sometimes I have to filter it a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what I get from your vibration is that obviously you're definitely not afraid of death because you've seen that reality and you see that there's nothing to fear anymore. Just in a general perspective, like has your perception on life, like I guess, become better and lightened up, like the way you used to take every single day. Now when you wake up, what do you see?
It has. And so much makes sense now. I don't have even an ounce of fear when it comes to death. But I will say, because I understand differently sort of the human process, sometimes life feels harder because it's like, I've seen the other side of it. And I sometimes feel like, why am I still like running on this hamster wheel? It's so difficult. How come it's not easier? Like have all this knowledge now, and why isn't my own human life easier? Like I still suffer the effects of a massive stroke and stuff. And so just because I can see and feel so much more than just the average person doesn't mean life is easy. It's still school. It's still a learning experience. Things are still difficult. But I think the biggest thing for me is I have gratitude for all of it, even the things that are awful and painful and suck. Looking in from the outside, people could maybe look at my life and go, like, obviously, like, she's full of it. Like, she's had a stroke. She's like, she's just spouting crap, all that sort of stuff. But for me, I am so grateful that I had a stroke and that I got to go to the other side to sort of confirm all of the things that I have always believed. And I think as we become more connected as humans, like you can pick up your phone now and see what's happening on the other side of the world, firsthand experience. It used to be you didn't know what was happening unless you picked up a newspaper or watched the news. And now you put in a search word and you can see live videos of stuff happening all over the world. We are so much more connected than we have ever been. And yet we are so much more disconnected and more lonely than we ever have been. And I think I never feel lonely now in a soul sense because I can see the interconnectedness of everyone and everything. It's a weird world we live in now, and making sense of it, I think, is super difficult. And I I can make sense of most things. Even if I don't like it, I can make sense of most of it.
Yeah, I think for me, and thank you for sharing that. For me personally, I remember like over the last couple of years, like when I first understood the nature of the self and what my true nature is, and it definitely provided this feeling of freedom and liberation from that veil of ignorance that was there. But I did struggle a long time with the fact that kind of with the question that what's the point of it all, because all the things you were doing before, whether it was trying to like make a lot of money or get famous, or even like the basic things like the concept of just going out every day, like all those things started to feel a little bit pointless. Like, oh, what's the point, when I realized like I'm the infinite pure consciousness. So I struggled with that for some time, but then I did realize that those are all experiences that are part of this curriculum that you have to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't just skip grades, right? Like you can't go from kindergarten to grade 12 and go, oh, no, I learned it all. Like every moment we exist, there's a lesson there. And so many people say, like, oh, there's no way I chose this life or planned this life. And if I did, I'm an idiot. Like, there's no way there's any bigger purpose to it. Also, with like reincarnation, like, oh, I'm never living a life again. Absolutely not. It's those people that are sort of I say younger, I don't mean like age-wise younger, but I mean like kind of vibration-wise, so, l like lower vibration compared to an older or high vibration soul. Those ones that go, "I'm never living a life again, you're full of crap, I'm not doing it," they're at the beginning of their life journeys, whereas, somebody like me or even you, or I think it's your brother, you're probably more like, rather than being here, you're like here. Like you're like, okay, like this human thing is starting to make sense. Like I get the point, even though I don't always agree with it, but I'm open to more. Um, just because we don't think it's true or real or exists doesn't mean it doesn't.
Do you think things like collective consciousness is something that also exists? Like, for example, when we look at the COVID-19 pandemic, that's something recent. Is that something that, like, a lot of the souls decided would happen together for their awakening? How does that work?
Yes. So I call it like collective enlightenment. We are all sort of walking forward towards the same goal. And so same with like any big tragedies, all of the souls that or the people that were going to be in that tragedy would have had to plan it all together on the other side before it happened. And so certain things happen because we all know in our heart and in our soul that the learning that will come from it is more important than not doing it. And so, yes, we all would have known that this was going to happen when we came into this life and wanted to walk through that.
Right. And where do you feel that, or maybe you've seen this in your vision, that as a humanity, where are we going in terms of our collective enlightenment? Are we getting closer in comparison to where we were before? Or do you think that there's still a long way to go?
There's still a long way to go, but we are much closer than we were even 10 years ago. And so, even though it feels like there's more dissension, more conflict brings togetherness. Not always in the best way, but it does bring togetherness. And so, the kind of, especially in the next couple of years, the chaotic or crappy things that are going to happen will bring people together, because where else do you go or look to if you're feeling disconnected and lonely? Um, sort of from chaos comes connection. And we are very connected, just not always in the right way. But as we raise our vibration as sort of a collective consciousness, all of the humans come together and raise together. It's not like one person is doing it and they get that benefit. We're all walking forward together towards collective enlightenment.
Yeah, and there's a quote by someone I'm not forgetting right now, but it goes like, at the end of the day, we're all walking each other home. So I think that's kind of what you were talking about. I do want to get your take, Amber, on the topics of like manifestation or law of attraction. What are your insights on that?
So I think often we do it backwards. So we try to hyper focus, like, okay, this is my 5-year goals. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And then you think of it over and over and over again. But because you're thinking of it in a heavy, energetic way, you're doing the opposite. So what I often say is, like, if there are certain things you want, and people like vision boards and stuff like that, don't do a vision board and put it on your wall and look at it every day. Do it and then stick it in a closet, and occasionally kind of go, oh, I wonder how I'm doing in that. You can pull it out or whatever, but don't have it right in front of you. We have infinite ability to manifest our lives, the things we want, the things we need, but we think of it in a human way. So rather than going, you know what, I would love to be rich, or I would love to be famous, or whatever it is, I would love that if every day when I woke up, I felt grateful and joyful. The rest will kind of come. Everything else will kind of happen as it needs to happen. But when we put sort of our ego self or our human self at the forefront, like, oh, I want what they have, like I want to be rich all the time and I want all this money and all this, whatever it is, it's super hard to manifest unless you're a young soul. Young souls can't come up against too much, what's the word? Like, I can't think of the word. Too much like opposition, or they will choose to go to the other side. And so that's why it looks like their lives are so easy, because they're just being given in everything all the time. Older souls tend to have to work harder for it. The whole sort of karma idea where people think, oh, they'll get theirs. They were it will come back to them. That's not necessarily how that works. If a person is putting out this energy where they don't care about anything and they will walk on anyone to get to where they are, that's what will keep happening for them. So rather than going, oh, they will get theirs, think, what can I do to feel fulfilled and grateful within myself, even if that person is doing that thing? So it's not necessarily like, oh, the universe will take care of them, because they planned their lives. And if they planned a life with no opposition or adversary events, that's the life they planned. You can try to speak negativity into their lives until the end of time, and it might not happen. So focusing on where you are and your skills and your abilities and your energy to sort of let go of the people who tend to walk on you, that's more karma. When you put out gratitude and joy, you will get back gratitude and joy. They're putting out negativity, selfishness. They will get that back to them, but they probably won't care.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna talk to you about karma, and you kind of cleared that up, because I feel like, right, what you said, at the end of the day, no matter what someone is doing to you, if you are truly like, if you know your true nature, then you wouldn't be affected by that
Yeah.
negativity or pain.
Yeah.
And
Well, cleansing it out, because we are affected sometimes. For me, a hard part of what I do is like the hate I get because of who I am. And it's so easy, especially if I've had a bad day or I'm having a bad brain injured day. I don't know why I do it, but often I'll go and read comments and people are so mean. And then I just go, oh, bah humbug. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. Screw everybody. I'm not even making money. And like, I'm getting all this hate all the time. And I get like just in this sort of, woe is me. My life's so hard. 100%. I am manifesting that and creating that mind frame, because for every hate comment, there's 100 wonderful, joyful comments of gratitude. But I'm choosing in that moment only to see the negativity. And so then what happens is I will be forced or faced with more negativity, because that's the energy I'm focusing on. So I'll just blur out or not see or notice all the wonderful, oh, thank you so much kind of things, and focus only on the negative. That's my choice. And that's the energy I'm putting myself into. I just have to make the choice to go, you know what? I'm not even going to look at those things. And then all of a sudden, I don't even see them. I don't notice them. I don't realize them. And I only invite like love and joy and gratitude in.
Yeah, there's one thing that I get confused about a lot, and that difference between having like that positive outlook because you are manifesting what's happening with you and kind of how you were sharing your example, but at the same time, it gets mixed up with like being over optimistic. Like sometimes I see people and they're like I don't know if they're working hard or not. That's like a separate thing, but sometimes I feel like they're so optimistic, and I'm not sure if that's like the definition of manifestation or if they're two different things.
It's more that they're sort of living in denial or just silently suffering because, everyone has hard days. And if you're not having hard days occasionally, you're not living. I call them my toddler temper tantrum moments where I just go, forget it. Like today, I can't do this human thing. I'm done. I'm taking, and I get angry. You know, when you go through any type of like very big life changing, especially a medical event, um, you have to grieve. Like I have to grieve who I was. There's so many things I can't do anymore, and I never will be able to do. And that sucks. And no matter how enlightened or joyful or grateful I am, some days it's heavy and it's horrible, and I struggle to find purpose. What is the point? What is the point of knowing all these wonderful things when I'm stuck in this physical body that's failing me or tried to kill me? And if you don't exist in all spectrums of human emotion and energy, you're not learning at the same level or depth as people who can see all those things. Just because I'm alive doesn't mean sometimes I wish I wasn't. And sometimes I wish I wasn't a burden to the family that still has to take care of me. I'm brain injured. So the sort of toxic optimism of, oh, well, it's not that bad, or people that are like, oh, you don't even look like you had a stroke. Wow, this is so wonderful. You're so great. Guaranteed they don't feel like that inside all of the time. For me, I have the wonderful gift of being an empath, so I have a hard time sometimes responding to people from their words. So like they might be talking very positively, big smile on their face, and I can feel what their insides feel like and why they are the way they are and what they're struggling with. And it's hard sometimes for me not to delve into that. But again, if they don't invite me in, it's not my right to do that. But the people who it just looks like they're always rainbows and sunshine and happy, they're not. They just probably were like learned that that is how you're supposed to exist. You need to bring joy to other people and sort of sacrifice yourself. There's ups and downs, and no human life is joyful and perfect all the time. And it's okay to say that it's not. Sometimes I am angry and miserable and I don't want to talk to anybody. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think bringing that to the forefront and saying, just because I have faith and I have connection doesn't mean my life is always easy. I think that's the reality of human existence.
And yeah, that's because obviously even though I know your story, by just looking at you, it doesn't seem like you have a medical condition. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that people are not able to see through that. Only you have that subjective experience of
Yeah.
the problems you go through and what you face. I mean, I want to know from you, like I'm not sure exactly about your family and friends, but how were they impacted by the situation, and has their faith deepened with this circumstance, or is it the other way around?
I think it has, yes. Me accepting my gifts brought a lot of things into question for my family. I practice religion, but I didn't come from a religious family, other than my mom was religious and she's actually gone back to religion. But when I accepted my gifts, everybody was like, well, how does this make sense? And they started doing their own research and trying to learn so they could support me. And then when I had the stroke, obviously that's very traumatic. They all had to say goodbye. And there was a lot of time where I wasn't conscious. So you know, I didn't have to experience how sad they were. And then I came back and started telling them what had happened. And I think pretty much my whole family has a different belief system about death and dying and that sort of stuff post stroke, even though we'd all been on this journey of trying to understand who the heck I was and what I was doing here. All of us are so much more open. Even my kids are more open to talk about it. You know, I'm embarrassing to them now. They're teenagers and they're like, absolutely not. Like, I don't show their faces on anything. Like, I don't talk about them that much, but we have a lot of conversations about everything that happened. And I think I can't say everyone has 100% faith that there's more to this existence and this human life, but definitely there's more questioning and more sort of faith that I'm not full of crap. So maybe do some like research kind of thing.
And also, Amber, like, since you are a psychic medium and you've been doing this for a long time, I guess I have a two-part question. One is that in order to continue your practice in like the most effective way, are there certain type of practices or like rules you need to follow for your own self to keep that, positive energy vibrations intact, or is this something that's natural? And my second question is that like, for example, when you're talking to me, like, are you able to see through, or do you have that control that, you have a choice to make it? Just wondering.
So definitely I have rules and boundaries. And up until 2 months ago, I wasn't doing mediumship. I felt like after the stroke, if I talked to dead people, I wanted to go back to the other side because they were there and it looked so wonderful. So I only talked to guides for the first 3 years. But I've always had a lot of rules and boundaries. Once I had the NDE, like it used to be, spirits would stand in the room with me and they would talk, I would listen, and then I would repeat it to you. Now it's all telepathic. I came back with that ability that I didn't have before. So now they think and their thoughts become my words. So I don't have to listen, interpret, and repeat. I just say what they're thinking, which makes it so much easier and less confusing. Because before I would be like, I would listen and I'd be like, what? I don't really understand what you mean by that. Or could you explain it more? And now their thoughts become my words and I just start talking and it's so, so much easier. I don't have the ability anymore. Like I used to be able, it was like a light switch. So when I wasn't working, it was off. Now, especially my empathic gifts, I don't turn it off anymore. So when I sit here, yes, I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to you, your guides, everybody around you, every dead person, and I can feel from you, your belief system, your just any energy you carry with you, I can feel, which I think makes it harder to be human. I think I have less friends maybe than I did before because nobody wants to know someone can feel their innermost thoughts and feelings. It's not comfortable to be around. So I try to limit what I say, but I don't limit now what I know, just because it's not uncomfortable for me anymore. So it's a lot easier for me post stroke. I get tired quicker. So I have like a less of a shelf life. I used to be able to do like 3 readings a day and I could work 3 or 4 days a week. I now work like 1 day a week and I can like my max is like 2 hours and then my brain just shuts down because so much of it is missing. Even just talking for this long is, oh, here, I'll show you. I think I explain it, but it's hard to envision it. But this is what my brain looks like. So this is all dead. This is the day after the stroke. So these areas no longer are white. They're black because it's just liquid. So all of this is gone. And then this is the frontal lobe stroke. So essentially 2/3 of the left side of my brain is gone. So everything else had to be rewired. And so, yeah, and I don't have as much stamina now. But it's so much easier. So much easier.
It's amazing, Amber. One, to end this conversation, a takeaway message that you would just like to give people listening because of this profound experience and gift that you have.
I think I always say I want everyone to know we're not alone. Like, no matter what you're doing, how you're existing, you are never alone. There's always a cheering squad on the other side. But I think what I want to add today is joy and gratitude are going to be our best friends in the next couple of years because it's going to be a very difficult 2 to 3 years. And finding small things to feel joyful about every day can help you stay grounded here. There is a purpose to each human existence. I know a lot of times when people listen to me or anybody like me, any type of spiritual kind of conversation, we often turn to it feels purposeless. Like, why are we doing this? If there's this wonderful, amazing, otherworldly experience, what's the purpose of the pain and the heartache and the lessons and all of that sort of stuff? And truly, it is to learn. We plan these lives with love. We don't plan them as punishment. And we will continue to learn. There is not a time where you won't be learning or teaching. And so, finding joy, finding gratitude, finding connection and grounding in the chaos will be your best friend moving forward. Try not to just tune out and what I do, have my little toddler temper tantrum moments. Don't let it last very long. Find a purpose to each moment of existence.
That's such a beautiful message. I have no idea why people would say anything negative about you. I think you've been gifted with this knowledge of the ultimate truth, and you're using this for the benefits of others without really caring about how famous you get, how rich you get, and that just shows that you have that selfless nature. Um,
Thank you.
just speaking to you, it just felt amazing because like whatever you said obviously had so much substance in it, and because it came from a firsthand experience, I'm sure that people will even benefit from it more. Thank you so much, Amber, for spending
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.